Welcome back to Just the Facts, y'all. My name is Jimmy. Today we're here with another video. Every single year in the NBA, we see guys who come out of nowhere and are stars in this league. Guys who weren't projected in the lottery, guys who weren't projected top 5, guys we didn't know would be stars. But there's been many instances in where guys who come out of nowhere and become star players. Whether that be for one reason or another, it happens every single year in the NBA. And this year is going to be no different. There's going to be guys from this NBA draft class that we thought was going to be great, and it turned out not so great. There's going to be some guys that were an afterthought when it came to an NBA draft, and they turn out to be stars. We see undrafted guys turn into really good rotational role players. It's hard to predict who's going to pan out and who's not, but what we can do is kind of talk about these guys and kind of have fun with it, y'all. So we're going to talk about my top draft steals from this year's NBA draft. I'm going to give y'all a couple guys from the first round, a guy or two in the second round, and hell, I might even throw in an undrafted player in there. So without further ado, let's get into it. First guy on the list, we have Jordan Hawkins from UConn. He went 14th in this NBA draft, and he was labeled as the best shooter coming out of this draft, and with good reason. At UConn, he had as good of a first to second year jump as anyone in the country. In his freshman year, he played sparingly, only like 15 minutes per game, and averaged 6 points per game, a couple rebounds, and 35% shooting from the field, and 33% from three. Nothing too impressive, but when you look at his per 40 minutes, he averaged 16 points per game and 5 rebounds. And by those numbers, we could tell he was going to be a very productive player once he got the minutes. But when his time came to shine, he put on to display his sniper-like tendencies that he'd been showing flashes of. He became one of the best shooters in the country, shooting at a 39% clip from 3 on 8 threes per game, which is absolutely amazing. He gets most of his threes off of catch and shoot opportunities, and he's a great off-ball player and created a lot of problems for opposing defenses. Hawkins shot 41% for 3 on just catch and shoot opportunities, and he got those in a variety of different ways. Hurley and UConn did a great job of maximizing his strengths, and I think his strengths will easily translate into the NBA if the Pelicans allow it to. He had a lot of misdirection, a lot of screen for the screener action, coming off pin downs, flares, all types of stuff. And it was very creative and it was very fun to watch. Hawkins' release was also so quick. He can get a shot off against anybody, and it really didn't matter. Against size, against really good defense, it didn't matter. But whenever guys did get up into him, he was able to take the guys off the dribble and make them pay in the mid-range or even go all the way to the basket. For as good of a shooter he is, he isn't scared to get into the paint and draw some contact. That really impressed me with him as well. Along with that, his cutting will be very effective into the next level, and that just adds a whole nother dimension into his game, and that'll make him much harder to guard. He will no doubt help the Pelicans, who were an average team from 3 in terms of percentage. They were at 36%. And they only shot 33s a game last season, which was second to last in the league. They might as well start shooting more threes to make their offense a little bit more dynamic. And I know with Zion on the court, that's going to be even more of a factor. Ingram, McCollum, and Trey Murphy are the only guys who are really reliable from three-point range on the Pelicans. And the good thing about Hawkins' game fitting with the Pelicans is that he plays mostly off the ball. So it doesn't take the ball away from Zion when he comes back, or Ingram, or CJ. And once Zion does return, he's going to demand a lot of attention in the paint. For all the shit people have been giving Zion, he demands a lot. He's one of the best and most dominant paint players we've seen, and he's going to get a lot of attention. He's going to get a lot of eyes looking at him. The defense is going to be geared to slow him down. And when guys are on the perimeter like a Jordan Hawkins, like a Brandon Ingram, like a CJ McCollum and Trey Murphy, it's very hard to really focus in on Zion when you have those type of shooters out there, right? So that's where I think Jordan Hawkins can make a huge impact for the New Orleans Pelicans moving forward. The second guy I have is Cam Whitmore, and this is probably a big draft steal for a lot of different people because he was a projected top 10, top 6 pick or something like that. And he fell all the way to 20, and we kind of find out the reason why he did fall was kind of because he had some bad workouts with teams that were within the lottery and had some bad interviews, things like that. So he kind of fell all the way to 20, and the Rockets picked him up. They have 2 top 10 prospects on their roster now without having to move up at all. So that's a win for the Rockets in and of itself, whether it works out or not. The thing that stands out to me about Whitmore is how great of a cutter he is, his timing, his angles on cuts, are advanced for an 18-year-old. He's not going to turn 19 until the summer league starts. So he uses his explosiveness and athleticism to his advantage. He cuts on a lot of post-up opportunities, and I think that's really going to fit in with what the Rockets are doing. That game really fits the Rockets' most complete player, Alperen Sengun. Sengun has a knack for finding cutters when he's in the post because he's such a good post player himself, and then sometimes he can find guys when he's driving, things like that. So defenses will be trying to stop Sengun, which allows guys like Whitmore to come off the ball once defenses aren't paying attention, and do a whole bunch of different things I'm sure Ime Udoka will have under his sleeve. Along with that, Whitmore is also a pretty good three-point shooter, mainly off of catch and shoot opportunities. He shot about 40% off of catch and shoots this past year in college, and that should have Rockets fans excited. However, his off-the-ball three is a work in progress. In fact, his entire handle is a work in progress. He tends to be very generous when dribbling the ball, giving it up to defenders a lot. Some of that had to do with his thumb injury that he had. I get it, but also his handle is just not as tight as it needs to be for a guard-forward combo type of player. On the defensive side, he has very tremendous upside as well. His 6'7", 230-pound frame, coupled with his athleticism and lateral quickness, makes him a very, very pesky defender, and the Rockets need that as well. There are many flashes of him last season being a very hard-nosed defender, not letting guys get by him, being very physical, and he was exceptional in passing lanes as well, being a disruptor, using his size on smaller guards and using this lateral quickness against bigger guys. I think if he has the right mindset defensively, he can be an exceptional defender. If he was drafted last year or 2 years ago, I wouldn't be so high on him defensively because of the culture that was there in Houston. No slight to Steven Silas, but they were not playing any defense there in Houston. With Ime Udoka here now, there's going to be way more of a focus on defense, especially from Udoka coming from the Greg Popovich tree. There's going to be more of an emphasis on playing defense, playing hard, and I think Whitmore can be the spearhead for that. And speaking of improving, I think the Rockets drafting Amen Thompson is really, really good for them, but I do think they need to pick up another guard that is more traditional to help run and set up the offense. Sengun's a great passer for his size for a big man, but they were last in assists as a team last year. So that's going to help out Whitmore a lot, having a point guard who's going to distribute and make plays to get him open because he's not the most efficient playmaker for himself, right? All in all, this is an absolute steal for the Rockets. I'm excited to see what they do moving forward, man. They're looking like a fun team to watch here in the future. The third guy I have is Chiante George. He went 16th overall to the Utah Jazz. And coming out of college, Chiante George was a 5-star prospect, a top 10 prospect in the country, and with good reason. He's a bucket getter. He's as pure of a bucket getter as they come. He has many different skill sets on that side of the ball as a scorer. At Baylor, he showed his bag. He dropped 15 points per game, 4 rebounds and 3 assists per game. Those 15 points per game was inefficient, but it did come in an abundance of ways. He's a very crafty scorer, and he uses an assortment of moves to get to the basket, finishing with euros, spin move, up and unders, things like that. He wasn't really afraid to attack the basket either. He wasn't shy to go and get contact. Along with that, George is also a pretty good shooter, and I know the numbers don't really suggest that, but I promise you he's a pretty good shooter. He also has good footwork and has a good enough handle to complement his shooting. He used his handle to create space off the dribble, and that's a really good sign for him. His shot selection is what killed his percentage, not his lack of shooting. So if he cleans that up a little bit, I think he's going to be fine. In pick and rolls, George really impressed me. He was very effective in pick and rolls, better than I remembered. He shot 46% off of threes, coming off directly off of pick and rolls. So I think if he can keep that up, he'll be good. Keep expanding upon that. Speaking of expanding upon that, his playmaking was not as bad as I remembered it being as well. So he can kind of make some plays off of pick and rolls, getting his big man open in the middle and getting him easy looks. And hopefully, obviously continues to build upon that. But that's something that he was a little bit better at than I had originally thought. And off the ball is where I really like Chiante as well. He has a really good balance of strengths when it comes to playing off the ball and playing on the ball. A lot of guards nowadays are one-dimensional. They're either one or the other. Chiante is a good mixture of both coming out of college right now, so I think that can be used to his advantage and help out the Utah Jazz. He came off a lot of pin downs, flare screens, etc., and he looked very comfortable in that position. It looked natural, right? His offensive game overall is pretty smooth. His handle's pretty smooth, and I think the Jazz got a steal here, man. They were 5th in three-point attempts as a team in the regular season, but only 20th in three-point percentage. So they were taking a lot and not making a lot. So I think Keyonte can help them out with that a little bit in that regard, no doubt. Also, they're desperate for a young guard that's going to step up and kind of take the reins a little bit. Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton are good for what they are, but the ceiling can only be so high with them, right? With Keyonte, I think the ceiling is higher with him developing and him getting better at his game. Chiante George will be just fine. I think he's one of the biggest steals in this draft. Now, for the most polarizing guy in this year's draft, probably as a player, is Imani Bates, and I want to throw him in here. I think he has the lowest percentage of the guys I talked about of being a actual steal in this draft, but he went in the 2nd round, so there's not too much to lose there. Originally, he started out in Memphis with Penny Hardaway. Things didn't really work out for whatever reason. I personally don't think Penny Hardaway is a good developer of a coach, but that's neither here nor there. That's a conversation for another day. He transfers to Eastern Michigan, and he becomes the guy on a mid-major team, lower competition, right? He put up his numbers. I will say that he did put up his numbers, but a lot of it was inefficient. A lot of it was hero ball. A lot of it was, this is my show. He averaged 19 points per game and 6 rebounds. He reminded us of how much of a bucket he was on many occasions. On the flip side, like I mentioned, wildly inefficient for the most part. Didn't participate in team basketball. Nonetheless, he was a very explosive scorer in a variety of different ways, from the 3, from the mid-range and at the basket. He used a pretty decent handle to create a lot of his separation to blow by guys frequently. His three-point percentage and overall field goal percentage could have been higher if his shot selection wasn't so bad, but that's the problem. His shot selection was horrible. To his credit, he did make plenty of tough shots that most college players wouldn't even think about shooting, but those shots that he did make gave him validation to keep on shooting these shots, right? These bad shots that are very low percentage and aren't conducive to winning. And my thing with Imani Bates is, when he's not a scorer, what is he? What does he do? Does he come off the ball and score? No, he's just an on-the-ball scorer. Does he play defense because he's 6'9" and he looks pretty athletic? Nah, he wasn't good defensively. Does he play make whenever all the attention's on him offensively? Nah, he's just going to shoot another shot. So he doesn't play winning basketball. The scoring is there, the skill set is there offensively as a scorer. So this guy's a prospect. He's a work in progress, a big work in progress. But a small percentage of me wanted to put him on this list just because there is a reality out there that he turns into a pretty good NBA player. I don't know why, but a guy like Kyle Kuzma pops up in my head when I think of best case scenario for Emoni Bates. Now, it's going to be hard for him to get to that level, but if he does, that'll be good enough because he went late 2nd round. So what more are we expecting, right? Now, other guys I will throw out there as, I guess, honorable mentions that I can see being steals. I heard a lot about Maxwell Lewis. I didn't do too much research into him, but I think he's a pretty crafty scorer himself that can score in many different ways. A pretty good shooter. He seems like a pro in college. You get what I'm saying? And then he's going to translate to the NBA solid player. So I think his floor is going to be high, but I'm not sure how high his ceiling can be. But that's a guy that can be a steal. Mike Miles to the Dallas Mavericks, I think, can be a steal. He went undrafted. He was I was actually surprised he didn't get drafted. He was a very good scorer all 3 years he was in college. Improved every single year he was in college. And he's just a bucket from the point guard position. Not a traditional point guard by any means, but yeah, Mike was actually a pretty efficient guard and a pretty good scorer himself. So, and a pretty good shooter. Not the most athletic guy in the world, but I mean, he's athletic. But I think if he develops over time, he'll be a solid NBA player for sure. I think Bryce Sensabaugh also going to the Utah Jazz can help out a lot. He's just a natural bucket. He is a big boy bucket. Like he's one of those guys that are strong, that are tough, that can get buckets in many different ways in the post, that can bully smaller defenders, that can blow by bigger defenders. It's kind of like he's kind of like one of those guys that is a really good scorer because he's like a mismatch in a way for pretty much anybody. It's weird, but Bryce Sensabaugh can be a very good scorer in this league. And Nick Smith was the other guy. I'm surprised he fell that low to 27, but maybe some of the injury history and some of the inefficiencies made him drop that low. But I think he got a lot of buzz before the season even started, and even throughout parts of the season. He seemed like a lottery type of guy, but for him falling to 27 just seems a little bit weird. He's paired back up with Brandon Miller, who was his high school or AAU teammate, something like that, right? I think he can be another guy for the Hornets as well. Those are the guys I have. Y'all let me know who y'all think are also some big steals in this NBA draft and why. Don't just say a name, and say why as well. And we can kind of have a respectable conversation in the comments down below. But if y'all don't mind to like this up for me, share it to a friend, post it to your story, and subscribe. That'll mean the world to me. I don't really ask for much, but I'm gonna continue to keep on making these videos whether anyone watches or not. But y'all, appreciate y'all for watching, and this was Jimmy from Just the Facts. I'm signing out. Peace.